Hi, good morning, and welcome to Practical Magic for Writers. This is our Genius Workshop. It's our 13-week workshop where we look at the element of air and how it's going to help our writing. Today is our introduction to the workshop. We're going to get started talking about the elements and magic in writing. Before we do that, if you'll just let me know who's here today by saying hello in the chat bar, that would be great. I am your professor of writing magic, Marya Summers, and I have a slideshow for you today. And then we'll get into maybe a little bit of Q&A and you'll see me live. But first, I'd like to start with the slideshow presentation. So if you'll just say hi and let me know who's here, that would be fantastic. I welcome Mary, and we're going to give people just a second to get on to this live webinar. If you don't have a pen and paper handy, go ahead and grab something to write with and something to write on. And once you get those things, we'll get started. All right, so as we get started, I'm going to invite you to settle back into your seat and find yourself in a comfortable position that supports you. Plug into earth energy, that feeling of being grounded by placing both feet on the floor, letting your legs just rest and be connected and relaxed, letting gravity hold you. And begin with a slow scan of the body, starting with the feet, and bring awareness to the physical self. And as you bring your awareness up into the legs, hips, torso, arms, neck, and head, just acknowledge anything that is asking for attention right now. Perhaps it's pain or tightness or some other sensation, something that could use just a little bit of compassion. And give that sensation a color. And on your next inhale, imagine you're pulling the breath into those spaces that need attention. And as the air touches them, as the breath touches them, the color softens and diffuses. And as you exhale, breathe the color out. Watch the color leave the body and float away. Find a little more ease. And scan the body again, and this time we're going to identify those places that feel good. Perhaps a sense of sweetness. And again, starting at the feet, going up through the legs, hips, torso, arms, neck, and head. Anything that feels good. And maybe it's just a small little bit today, but whatever that sense of ease or sweetness is, give it a color. And on the next inhale, go ahead and watch the color of that ease or sweetness deepen and swell throughout the body. Let it wash over you and soothe the places that need comfort. And now as you exhale, let the color wash out and envelop you. Imagine it's bathing you like an aura in that sweet and colorful goodness. As you inhale again, gently and fully feel the whoosh of the inhale bathe all your cells in clean, fresh energy. And as you exhale, wash away the emotional and physical debris. We're going to start in this refreshed, receptive state. Your mind is clear like the blue sky. Breathe in sky. You are the sky, and everything else is just weather. I love that saying. You are open, relaxed, aware, and we're ready to be witness to new experiences, to receive new information. And so we begin our time together today. So if you're just joining, we have a slideshow presentation to begin, and then we'll go over to Q&A with some live feed. You can see my face. So I didn't do my makeup and hair for nothing today. Welcome to Mary and to Janine. Thanks for being here today. Other people will probably join us as we go. So the first question is what writing challenges you might be having, what project you are working on, or what would you like to work on, and what does your relationship with your writing look like? Now that's 3 questions there for you. Pick one of those that appeals to you and just go ahead and type it in the chat bar. So I am working on this book, Practical Magic for Writers. I'm finishing up the Genius book. I'm transitioning it from a workshop into a book. The challenges that I am having, I think, are mostly making sure that the things that I'm saying are clear to others, that I'm supporting them with enough examples, but not belaboring the point. So that's my challenge right now. But my relationship with my writing feels really good, thanks to this Practical Magic for Writers. I practiced what I preach here this morning before I got started. I lit one, but not only one, but 4 candles, invoking the elements to help me and to aid us all in being receptive and loosening the strictures of those things that are keeping us stuck and to deepen our work. So just if you will, there's a little bit of a delay, but go ahead and just take a moment and acknowledge those things that you're either challenging you or what you are working on or what your relationship with your writing looks like now. And take your time with that. There's no rush. While you're typing that in, just let me know everyone is good. Everyone can see the slideshow. Everyone can hear me. Is that right? Just if someone could help me out there and let me know. So people need to start on the same page together so that we know that we're talking about the same thing. Great. Thank you, Lisa. Lisa says, yes, she can hear me and see the slideshow. So practical magic for writers. I'm going to define some terms here. Magic is the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with the will. So we have something that we want, but it's not enough to just want it. We have to put things in action. We have to will it to be, right? That's our intention. So we're working in the science and art of having things change because we want them to, through means that are not currently understood by science. So you'll see as we go through this webinar that I frequently bring science into the discussion because I think that we can look to the natural world to see why the elements are working for us, or to see how these different energies are at work. But there's other things like the invocation of spirit. For instance, this morning I had a whole party. I had Jupiter, Isis, Saraswati, and the for Earth I have the spirit of my beloved cat Oliver, who recently passed. He was such a physical comfort that I invoke him for that physical grounding and comforting. So, you know, there's no proof, right, that these things exist, that you can actually call in Saraswati or Isis or your ancestors. Uh, so this is something we don't understand how these things work. Maybe it's psychology, maybe there's another entity out there, but they're not currently understood by science. And so that's what I mean by magic. Okay. Some people spell it with a K. Um, I am still spelling it with a C. I may actually change that. Excuse my rickety voice this morning. So by practical, what I mean is that we're going to practice, that we're going to repeat an action with the aim of increasing competence. So as we go through the workshop, you'll see that I ask you to do things on a daily basis. And this idea that we practice our writing, that we practice our relationship with the magic and with our writing is really important to this workshop. So I just want you to understand that this idea of practical both exists in the idea of practice, um, and that we're going to practice to get the results that will impact our life in useful ways. So that idea that it's practical. So it's not just that we're practicing, uh, for instance, ceremonial magic is a beautiful thing, and a lot of rituals, pagan rituals, are really beautiful in their ceremony and deeply resonant in the psyche. But this is uses those, but as they directly apply to our writing. So you'll see that every single thing that I ask you to do in this workshop, any ritual or any magic, involves putting the pen to paper. And then lastly, we use fairly common or everyday items in our magical work. So you won't have to go get eye of newt or, tongue of goat for any of these things, because I don't know about you, but I have never seen a newt and I don't have a goat. So instead, I might ask you to, get some peppermint tea, which is readily available at a grocery store near you, right? So the idea is that we can do these things with common everyday items that don't ask us to spend a bunch of money or to, you know, uh, go to an extravagant means to make them work. And lastly, we're going to work our practical magic by and for our writing. Okay. So writing is a powerful tool of magic. People write spells and invocations, they write rituals, um, and they write of work for fiction that change the way that we see the world and create magical uh, fantasies for us to dwell in. And I'm thinking right now of like Harry Potter or any other uh, world or movie that you might really enjoy entering. I'm thinking of Margaret Atwood and her work in her book Practical Magic, which also became um, a movie, or you know, any other Ursula Le Guin, right? These fantastic worlds, or even just the magic of opening a portal to someone else's everyday life, someone that we don't know, but who we feel like we do know because we've entered their world. And poetry, which allows us to move through the wispy, murky, deep, dark, mysterious world of the psyche, right? All those connections. If that's not magic, people, I don't know what is. So, Lisa this time is working on her relationship with her writing. Um, that's beautiful. So this Lisa's been through the workshop once before with me, and so this idea that writing is a workshop. It is a workshop. Writing is a workshop, people. That's entirely true. Writing is a relationship, and this idea that we're not alone in this, and how can we um, nurture that relationship and develop it so that it is deeper and more satisfying. Mary says, I have a project I prepared for but haven't acted on. I want to hold a collage art workshop that includes poetry. I can't decide on a date. Okay, that's a really practical and very clear vision of what you want to work on. And when we have practical and clear uh, goals and intent, we get answers. So good job on that. And Janine says, I'm currently writing little stories and copy for my website. It's going well. Though my focus is completing the website, I wonder what is next post website, perhaps a larger book. So I love that Janine is working here with air energy, which is this idea of possibility, which we'll get into in just a couple of lessons. This idea of how do we hold space for possibility and leap into new ideas and opportunities and situations that we might not even have conceived of yet. Great. So as we start with this, I want to let you know that I may use words that are triggering for you. I know that for a long time, when people said God or spirit, I was deeply triggered. um, and so I just want to let you know that I ask for you to have some openness here and to understand that whether you are atheist, and some people are like, how can you be atheist and work magic? I know people who are. They think it's all them doing everything. And they are very scientific, and they believe that it's the psyche, the subconscious, that is manifesting these things in their world. Fantastic. I have no qualms with that. That's I If it works for them, I totally support that. Some people are agnostic and they're not sure of what's out there, right? And some people have a faith. They are like, yes, I believe in Allah, or yes, I believe in Jehovah, or yes, I believe in ISIS, or yes, I believe in Brahman. So this is inclusive of whatever you believe. Just know that I tend to favor the Western traditions, with the exception of yoga. That is the Eastern tradition that I have folded into my practice. But whatever your notion of spirit is, or the universe with a capital U is, whether that's the subconscious or the psyche or the some deity, or a vague notion of the universe, I want you to know that we're all talking about the same darn thing. So, regardless of what our worldview is, our cosmology is, we all believe that there is a generative force in the universe that brings things into existence. And whether we call that science and we want to call it the Big Bang, and we want to look to the generative power of the seed and how that sprouts and how cells reproduce themselves, right? So, or whether we want to call it God, right? That God made the world in 7 days, and or whatever your mythology is. And basically, any story is a myth. It doesn't mean that it's false. It just means that it works on a psychological basis. But we all agree that the universe is generative, that things are being created all the time, right? Um, and we also all agree that the universe is sustaining. And I look around and I'm like, wow, I've been here for 50 years. This planet has been here for a super long time. I guess I need some science on exactly how long it is, because I don't remember from my Earth science class. If someone knows that, feel free to chime in there. But and the planets have stayed in their orbits, and the universe is generally being sustained right around us. Every day the sun comes up. It has every day. I'm trying to think. Water molecules hold together so that I can drink. So we agree that there's a sustaining force. And lastly, we all see with our eyes that the universe is transformative. So often this transformation is difficult. We see it as death, or death is a transformation, right? When we eat, right? Things have to die so that other things can live. So this idea that we transform our food into energy, so and to then take the nutrients into our cells, right? So these are good things. We also see that this is reflective. If we get to our writing, you're like, that's great, Mariah, but what's your point here? My point is that we all believe the same thing, and that if I use the word God, simply translate it to whatever that means for you, right? So try not to get too triggered by like, I don't believe in this God stuff. Um, the other thing I want to point out is that these same qualities, these generative, sustaining, and transformative qualities, exist in our writing, right? So you'll see that we sit down, we put pen to paper, and we start putting those ideas down there. But it's not enough to just start. We have to see it through, right? We have to complete. So we have to keep showing back up for our work and sustain it. And ultimately, um, things transform, things change in our writing. And you might see that as, hey, I've decided to revise and edit. You might see that as a conclusion, right? If the generation is the introduction, the transformation is the conclusion. And as you know, every ending is a new beginning, right? So this idea of this cycle is really well represented in the triskelion there that you see reflected. When I was teaching college, my students used to ask me about the triskelion I wore around my neck, and they're like, "What is that?" And I was like, "It represents anything that works in threes: breakfast, lunch, and dinner, maiden, mother, crone, right? Father, Son, Holy Spirit, peanut butter and jelly." And then, yeah, that was the joke. Yeah, that's just two things, actually. All right. Mary says, thank you, Mary. She says the Earth is 4.5 billion years old. That is some long sustaining action of the universe, is it not? Can I get an amen to that? Like, good job, universe. Okay, so some of the work that we're going to do, you should have received, if you're signed up for the workshop, there may be some people that watch this either in live or in replay that haven't currently enrolled. But if you're enrolled in the workshop, you've already received your lesson. It's pretty substantial, right? It's about the length of a book chapter, and I encourage you to read it as soon as possible. I also encourage you to print it out. Okay. I know lots of people are like, but what about the trees? And as someone who is a deep sense of stewardship for this planet, I'm with you on that. I understand that. However, we do learn better when things are printed rather than online. Like if you're just looking for information, the internet and online is a great way to do that. However, you're trying to retain information, it's better to interact with it in a physical copy. Studies have shown that this is true. It's not just me saying this, and it's part of the reason that I have always advocated for a hard copy of something that you really want to learn. So as we go through this workshop, we have three kinds of work that we're going to do. One is writing work, one is magical work that is not a spell, and then the other one is spell work. So for your magical work, I'm going to ask that you create space. And here in this picture is a picture of my altar from days of yore, this a few years back. If you read in the packet, I explain how I first started my altar when I first started this practice. It was just a simple picture of Saraswati. That's that little pink picture in the yellow frame that was on a greeting card that someone gave me, and I would regularly leave flowers and light candles to her, and you'll see that I have a white candle and a yellow candle, sun and moon candles there. So you're going to create a space, an altar to honor your writing. What I ask is that you find an image that represents your creativity. So for me, that was Saraswati. she's a river goddess, and I needed my writing to feel like it was flowing and easy and supported. Um, but Saraswati is also the goddess of education and learning, of school. So she was in creativity. So she was an ideal representation to me, for me, for my writing. You'll also need to get a book of shadows. Um, I have to tell you that sometimes I have trouble discerning what should go in my book of shadows and what should go in my regular journal, because writing for me is very much um, a magical act. Um, but I'll tell you, if you're noticing, what definitely needs to go in your book of shadows is any spells that you do. So you're recording them there, um, and record any synchronicities that you experience. And I would say the write and reflect portions of this workshop, which I'll touch on in just a moment, should probably also go in there, because you'll see as you're doing these write and reflects that that things are going to come to you. It's almost like you're holding space, like as like a prayer or as a meditation while you're doing these. Okay, so those uh, could, I would say, also do those in there. Finally, you're going to need a binder for your work, such as the handouts. That would be the chapters, the lessons that I'm sending to you, the schedule, so that you have it right there. New work, and any questions or problems that you're having, I would put in there, because you're going to have a bonus coaching call with this, and it's really helpful to see what you've gotten done, where you're stuck, any questions that you have. Lots of times, if you're just reading the handouts, you fly through them, you forget your questions, or you forget where you got stuck. So I would suggest those three things. Let's talk a little bit about the elements. If you have questions as I go along, just pop them there in the chat bar and I will answer those questions. So these four elements, air, fire, water, and earth, have long, since ancient times, going back to Babylon, to ancient Greece, to ancient Hindu culture, these elements have represented the energies and the principles of the physical and spiritual universe. So you'll see them frequently represented with, you see in the middle that little star with the fifth, and I'm going to put in air quotes, element, which is not really an element. It's spirit. Spirit is unmutable. It never changes. It's endless. Whereas the other four are mutable and finite. So spirit itself is widely regarded as difficult to understand. In the Enochian system, which is the angelic system, the tablet of spirit is the key to all mischief. In Hinduism, Akasha, which is spirit, is the egg of darkness. Okay, so this idea of darkness and mischief, remember, these aren't bad or evil, they're just complicated and difficult, right? So complicated and difficult does not mean bad and evil. It just means, hey, we're not exactly sure what we're working with here. If you don't quite get what spirit is, you're in good company, right? And at best, sometimes it's like that glorious ineffable, that thing that cannot exactly be expressed. That's why lots of times I hem and haw as I talk about it, because it means different things to different people. And because it's infinite, it's really hard to talk about. So the elements themselves are a lot easier to discuss. And so as we talk about these things, we already have a sense of what these are like. Like, we know that air is an expansive energy. It's really quick moving. It's hard to pin down. We know that fire is warming. It's transforming, right? We get it in alchemy, this idea that there's a change associated with that. And it's also quick moving. Air you can't see or touch, right? It needs to be represented by something. Fire, on the other hand, it's tangible. Water is cool. It's supporting. It's effortless. It's got this cohesion, right? Water molecules cohere. So it's got this flowing quality that feels good and kind of delicious. Whereas earth energy is uh, very little literally grounded. It's stable, it's structured. You can build on earth energy. You can't really build on air energy, right? I, in fact, you got to create structures in the air if you want to build up, right? So you need that earth energy in order to go skyward. And if you have a big um, project, right? That's air, this idea of it's really expansive. You're going to need a lot of structure to support it. Otherwise, it's going to crumble. So understanding the things in terms of these elements, and the lesson really expounds upon these ideas and what they mean, but just understanding how these things work for us. That fire is like this, the will. So if we look at in this workshop, air is akin to the mind. Fire is the will. Water is our emotional self, and earth is our material body, our physical body. We look at how these things interact to support our writing. So as we go through these things, there is a table of nature-based elemental associations in your lesson. I've put it here for you again so we can look at it together. In Wicca and other earth-based, nature-based magical traditions, air is where we begin. So air initiates things. Its direction is east. It's associated with dawn in the morning time, with spring, and with infancy and youth. So this is what we're looking at in this workshop, right? This idea of initiating things, of new beginnings, of starting. And we start here very much because this is a nature-based workshop, right? This idea, I'm going to say, go out into nature. Why? Well, good writing, as we know, is specific. It's grounded in specifics, right? The more you go and touch things and see the world, and the less that you're just in your head, the better your writing's going to be. Also, as we invoke spirit in this nature-based approach, we're getting this lovely union of specificity, which is finite, and spirit, which is the infinite, right? So there's this real energetic quality to it that creates resonance and depth for our readers. Fire is the second, so we move from air, which is in the east, and then we're moving clockwise to the south. It's noon, afternoon time, summer, and like early adulthood, right? So that's fire element. Frequently, I see a lot of writers stuck in this air fire area, which is very projective. So air and fire are all about going out and seeking. They're frequently called masculine elements. I'm putting that in air quotes because women have these qualities too, and you're not being a woman correctly if you have a lot of air and fire. It just means you have a lot of energy that is projective, meaning it's going out into the world, and it's very much about seeking, right? Um, and of course we start here because, and of course people have frequently a lot of these energies because they're associated with the early part of life. So if you've got those energies, maybe chime in the chat bar and let me know. Air and fire, like this idea that we move fast. Air is a lot of thought, a lot of thinking, and fire is very will driven. So you get this idea that, I've got all these ideas and I really want to accomplish them. Water is associated with the west, with evening and then the nighttime, with fall and with midlife. And again, water is going to be the emotional quality of the writer. And as you know, lots of us, as we mature, become more in touch with our emotions, better able to express them in ways that are constructive and that serve us and others, right? Frequently this needs some nurturing in people. There are others for whom they've always been very water in their expressions. And finally, we have earth. Just as when things settle down, right? Things are up in the air and then they settle down, or when they are laid to rest, right? It comes at the end. So we see that in old age, in winter, and in the late hours of the day. So these are good correspondences to know, because if you're trying to initiate something, right, you want to do it in the dawn in the morning. You want to do it in the spring, right? You want to invoke the east. Um, so these are things that you can think of as you move forward. If these are familiar to you, great. If they're new, I suggest that you work with them a little bit. You'll also see in the workshop that I talk about moon phases. And when the moon is dark, it is a new moon. That's where we are today. We're initiating in this new energy of the dark moon. And so the workshop as we move forward, right, is going to ride that energy of the moon as it gathers toward full, which is so when you initiate things, you want to initiate them on a new moon and allow them to grow with the energy of the moon. And as the moon goes toward dark, from full to dark, or full to new, you want to banish things. It's a time to get rid of things. Qabalah, you do not need to be familiar with Qabalah here. I do want you to know that I refer to it within the workshop. There's a combination of the nature-based and the Kabbalistic in this workshop. This is the tree of life you see represented here. You don't have to be an expert or know anything about these systems. I've been studying this for a few years now, and it is quite intricate and complex. If you look up at the top, you'll see that there's like those three bubbles that are over the top. That represents what exists before anything exists. So basically, it's the nothingness. It's limitless light, right? This idea, first there's nothing, and then there's limitless light, right? And so you start there with nothing. How is that like the writing process, people? Right? The blank page, we start with nothing, right? And in the first bubble up at the top, you see here, it's this Kether, right? At number 1, you see at the very tippity top, the white one. Rabbis and mystics don't even talk about Kether because it's so close to God. They say there's no sense in even talking about it, right? So just so you know, this is a diagram that depicts how things move from the unmanifest all the way down to the very bottom, where you see that 10th little orb, which is multicolored yellow, orange, green, and black. That's the manifest world. So Qabalah or Qabalah, depending on how you want to pronounce that, is basically a system of explaining how things are manifest from the divine into the physical world. That's easy, right? Easy peasy, right? Oh yeah, it's just a diagram representing how things are manifested. Know that in this system, it's different than the nature-based system. This is looking at Qabalah, which has if you spell it with a K, that means it's a Jewish tradition. If you spell it with a C, it means it's a Christian tradition. And with a Q, it's the occult. But just know that that's why it's spelled so many different ways. What's important to note here is that the initiating element, which is fire in this system, and then it moves to water. So the first two, which would be the white and gray ones up at the top, are fire element, which is masculine, which I'm denoting there with a positive because it's projective. And then it moves into Bina, which is the black one over there on the left, which is water element. So it moves into the water, which is the feminine. Then all the middle spheres here, from the blue, the red, the yellow, the green, the purple, and the orange, these are all in this world of air, which is a masculine world. So as energy moves, it's kind of zigzagging across. It's starting up at that fire. It's moving into the water. Then it goes into the air, which is a male-based energy. And then it goes to earth, which is ultimately feminine. So feminine receptive, right? Earth, it's receiving all this energy from above. So there's a real polarity in the Kabbalistic system of the male seeks the female, seeks the male, seeks the female. And it doesn't end there at earth. Actually, guess what happens? As every end is a new beginning, we go back to fire, which is spirit, right? So this workshop blends the two systems, um, because they're both, quote, true, right? Um, and I'm putting that in air quotes for you, but know that especially Qabalah is like super, super complex. I've extracted the lessons of this from you and applied them to the things that I'm asking you to do in the workshop. Okay. But if you're like curious about that, you can do as I have and spend years of study learning them. So the work that you're going to do for this workshop, you'll see that in every lesson, every packet that is emailed to you, there is a section that's called Write and Reflect. So the Write and Reflect sections are super easy to ignore. How do I know this? Because people have ignored them in the past. What I'm going to say to you about this is, first of all, I honor your choices. If you choose to ignore, I respect that. I will say that the workshop works best if you are immersed in it. So it's 13 weeks, people, not just randomly, right? So this idea of doing things in a 90-day period is a way you begin a habit, right? 13 weeks is roughly 3 months, roughly 90 days, a little longer. But if you're immersed in this, it's going to be more powerful. Know that you can play with the prompts that I give you. So you can write poetry or fiction, an essay, a journal entry. It sounds like I'm asking you to write a journal entry, right? So for instance, I will say, write about anything that moved you, spoke to you, or challenged you within this introduction, right? That's one of the prompts. So lots of times people will sit down and they'll be like, I really was interested in Qabalah. It was very cool. I wonder what all those orbs are about. It was really colorful, and I really liked the idea of the polarized energy pulling through. And I'm like, okay, that's a journal entry. But what if instead you decided to write a poem about it? So writing about something that moves you or speaks to you doesn't mean that you have to write a journal entry about it. You might write about it as a poem. Or you might, in whatever you're working on, say, you know, I really connected with that idea of spring as an initiating element. And so my next scene, I'm going to set, and it might be in something you're already working on, right? So my next scene, I'm going to set in the springtime, and I'm going to show how everything's being initiated in this scene with, flowers pushing up and blossoming, pushing up from the earth and blossoming. And I'm going to show the new energy of the sunrise, right? So it doesn't have to be, quote, an extra thing to do, right? End quote. Think of it as a way to deepen the imagery in your writing while increasing your own awareness of the elements and the magic of this workshop. You guys got that? Let me know if you got what I'm saying there. Tell me about, in fact, this will be even better. Tell me how you might use that prompt in something you're working on right now. So something we've talked about today so far that moved you, spoke to you, or challenged you in some way that you can use it in something that you are already writing. What would that look like possibly? So for instance, I'm working on a poem about the ocean. And I would like to include the idea of polarity in that pull and push of negative and positive energy into that poem. So I've already started it. I don't have that polarity in there yet. So I'm going to put, you know what? I'm going to bring polarity as a theme into my ocean poem that I'm working on. Ta-da! So it's as easy as that, right? Janine, right, she said as far as energy, when we were talking earlier, she has a lot of earth energy, Capricorn, fire to create, air to consider, plan, and good old water to be aware of my emotions. So Janine's working with a lot of, with all of them. We all actually are working with all of them. You will see, however, that some dominate and some get some kind of dysfunctional sometimes, right? So if I get air in my water, that might look like I'm not able to control my emotions. I might, have uh, a lot of projective energy in my emotions, so that I'm kind of spilling them on people, um, and that they're kind of making a mess, right? So it's not necessarily. First of all, it's not always great to have all of them going at the same time, in a way that's dysfunctional. Although we need them to be balanced and functional in the things that we do. Yeah, so Lisa might cultivate, she says she's very much air and not very much fire. She might cultivate some fire energy as she goes through this workshop, right? And I think the fact that she's back in the workshop and this deliberateness, this intention to work in relationship with her writing is very much a fire approach. So good job, you're already cultivating that. So the magical work was formerly called homework. I worked in academia for years and years, so I'm like, this is homework. I've decided to not call it homework anymore because that doesn't sound fun and delightful like magical work does. Um, so your magical work this time is going to be stuff like choosing your book of shadows, like go out. Your magical work this time is to find book to use as your book of shadows if you don't already have one. If you've already been through the workshop before and you have something that's working for you, great. But set this aside as something dedicated just to your magical work. I ask for you to write 15 minutes a day. That's part of your magical work, right? It's part of your spiritual work, people. Magical and spiritual work, right? So write for 15 minutes daily. It doesn't have to be hard. You don't know what to write? No problem. That's why the write and reflect sections are there. Go find a write and reflect, pick it up and go, you know what? How can I apply this to my writing today? So if you're looking at write about the element that you most identify with, how does it serve you as a superpower? How does it hinder you? You could write a journal entry. You could sit there and reflect on how that is true for you, because this meditation, this dharana or focus, dharana is a term we use in yoga. It's one of the limbs of yoga. This focus, fire energy, by the way, really serves us in allowing us to get some answers about how our element is serving us as a superpower or how it's hindering us. On the other hand, you might say, I'm already pretty dialed into that, but wouldn't it be really cool if I, with intent, created a character that was really earthy, right? His sign was in Virgo, and he was really practical, and he wore earthy hues, right? So you already have some structure to start manifesting in your work with an awareness of elements. And I promise you, people, the more that you work with intent, with spirit and the elements, the more powerful your writing and your connection with spirit is going to be. Okay. And lastly, so I say choose a book of shadows. That's your homework this time. Your magical work. Sorry. You're going to set up an altar and begin to leave offerings. And an offering, sometimes I leave a line of poetry, right? A poem does not have to all happen in a day, people. You can go on a walk pick a flower and bring it back and leave it on the altar. You can collect a bit of words on your walk and say, you know what, these words were like kind of rolling through my head and I leave them to you, Saraswati. Thank you for these words. Right? Um, you can leave offerings of flowers, of sometimes a little piece of chocolate. Find out, you can do research on your deity if you've chosen one about what they like and leave those offerings. If your offering is if the image on your altar is, uh, let's say, a, a river, a picture of a river rather than the deity Saraswati, maybe you bring some stones to the river, right? And you lay them about nicely. Or maybe you bring, I don't know, sometimes I bring back little branches from trees and stuff that um, ignite my curiosity and my whimsy, and I leave them on my altar. Um, So that's the next thing that you're going to do as far as your magical work, and write 15 minutes daily. And then I'm asking that you share pictures of your books of shadows and of your altar, and tell us about them on the Facebook group. It is so important, people, to feel connected and supported. Okay. That is very much an earth energy thing. This idea that we need tribe, we need other people, we need to be seen, and we need to have reflected back to us that we are good and that we're doing great, right? It's just part of the human need. So by you showing up and sharing, you are A, serving yourself, and B, serving others, right? So this idea that we need each other is um, a really fundamental part of this workshop. Um, and finally, start paying attention to the magic already at work as synchronicity. So you may see as I did the other day, like I've been working with some healing energy. I had some health issues come up, and suddenly, and I had never worked with angels before. I'll tell you that. I wasn't even sure angels were a real thing, and suddenly the angel Raphael started appearing on everything, right? And some of the stuff that was showing up in the internet, I can kind of guess at how that happened, right? Like, they have algorithms that find that I searched perhaps healing meditation, and now they're popping up with, oh, you want healing? You want Raphael. So that I can see how that would happen. Not that algorithms aren't magic too, but the craziest thing happened. I'm working on the next workshop in the next section of my book, which is Earth. And the crazy thing that happened was that um, I'm looking at the 10 of discs, the 10 of pentacles, the 10 of coins, right? I'm looking at it, and in the Thoth deck that I use, right there in the center of it, I'm reading the Hebrew, and my Hebrew's gotten pretty good since I've been studying Qabalah. And I'm like, that looks like Raphael in the middle of that coin. And I look at it again, I'm like thinking, maybe my Hebrew's just off, or maybe I'm really just being suggested very heavily. And I looked it up and I was like, oh my gosh, Raphael is associated with the East, associated with air, also associated with creativity and healing. It was like Raphael was sitting there like knocking on my forehead, like, hello, hello. So I've been invoking Raphael more frequently because air, workshop, genius, right? In the East, right? All those things that I'm working with, plus the healing and creativity. I was like, I hear you, Raphael. So I've been having conversations with him, right? And lastly, so that would be a synchronicity, right? So all these things just keep on happening. I'm like, oh, you want me to pay attention to that. So keep track of that and write those down in your book of shadows. Lastly, you will see there's not any spell in the first packet, but you will see them as we go. So there will be some spell work. And isn't it curious that spelling is necessary both for magic and for writing? Let's see. So Crystal says, magic work, yummy. Yes, that's the whole The whole point of this is to feel supported and yummy as we do the work, right? Mary says, I can see immediately how strong the earth element is in this poem I'm working on. It's about collecting rocks in a field with my father so he can build a wall of fieldstone. I can describe this in detail, but I really want emotional, free flowing essence to be imbued into the narrative. Such great clarity there, Mary. That's really wonderful. And I can't wait to see how that poem, how it shapes up and how it's infused with the magic that you're cultivating during this workshop. Janine says, my exclamation point so far is to be aware of which energy is currently prominent and to also call on the other energies when I need them. So, one way you can do that, Janine, is to intentionally invoke them on your altar. So, I began my altar as I showed you in an earlier slide, with the basics, like a candle and a picture. But as I've gone through, I get more mindful. I'm trying to cultivate more fire, or I'm trying to cultivate more earth. Those are the two I'm really working on right now, are fire and earth. Um, and so lighting the candle is really important since that's fire element, and then earth element. I frequently will honor, as I've said, in like bringing back stones or things from my walks. Um, what elements should invite into the poem to co-create with earth? Mary, I would invite you to answer that question for yourself. Of course, I have a Mariah answer, but you're really looking for a Mary answer. So that might be something that you do and write in reflection. Uh, and I find that as I light a candle and invite inspiration into my work, that those answers come. Um, Please, as you get answers, share them in the Facebook group. Okay. Hey, I got an answer to that thing I was asking the other day on the webinar. So, um, yeah. And Lisa says she works with angels. So, um, yeah, we're all in different phases of our spiritual evolution. Um, and different phase doesn't necessarily mean one person is above the other. A phase could just, be lateral, right? But this idea that, Lisa's been working with angels. I've been working with Lisa. Now I got angels. Evidently, it's kind of like, bed bugs. Just kidding. Just kidding, angels. You're not bed bugs. But this idea, yeah, we've got an infestation of angels now. I've got my very own one now that I've been working with Lisa. I got my own angel who's been showing up. So thanks, Lisa, for that gift in my life. All right. So in a nutshell, this workshop, on odd weeks, we have a webinar. So we have a webinar this week. Next week, we won't have a webinar. We'll have only a lesson. That'll be emailed to you as a packet, right? You should get it as a PDF packet. Again, I strongly encourage you to print those out. And then we have our Facebook group. It's a private group just for us. It's actually set to private, which has created some problems getting you people in. If haven't been like a friend of mine, I've been having trouble getting some of you in. But I wanted you to know that your privacy is deeply important to me. So that's why it's set to private on the workshop. But within the group, we're only going to be supporting and witnessing each other. No criticism, not even constructive criticism is allowed. Okay, so this is an idea. The idea here is that we are doing a lot of generation. It's a generative workshop, not a critical workshop. Okay, so we'll be sharing, supporting, celebrating, connecting. We can ask questions and respond. So if you have a question like that you need answered, put it there. But this is not a critical workshop where if you post, hey, I wrote this poem today, all we're going to do is clap and cheer like crazy for you and point out the things that we love about it. So if you need a critical workshop in addition to this one, go get it, right? But there's lots of workshops like this one, and there's only one workshop like this that I know of. So this is that. And lastly, everything that is shared in this workshop is private. And so I want you to know that you're safe. The things that you share here stay here. By proceeding with this workshop, you agree not to discuss or share the written work of any other workshop participant with anyone outside this workshop, right? So if someone has a great idea, don't go telling other people their great idea, right? I don't think I really have to tell any of you that because you are deeply uh, spiritual and amazing, awesome, lovely people. But just in case someone needs a gentle reminder, okay? And ultimately, okay, I have this stone on my altar. What would you attempt to do if you knew you could not fail? This is an air energy workshop, people. We're all about possibility and potential in this workshop. So I invite you right now to connect with what would you attempt if you knew you could not fail. So I'm not even asking you what you would do, but what would you attempt? Could you just sit with that for a moment? Like imagine it's a stone in your hand, that you're holding this stone and placing it against your heart and grounding your heart in this energy of what does your heart want to attempt if you knew you could not fail? I actually took this picture at a creative flow yoga and writing workshop that I was leading, and I brought this stone almost every single time to our writing sessions, and it's just a good reminder. I think all of us get a little stuck in what we can do, right? So like I know that I can lead writing workshops and I know that I can write books of nonfiction because I'm good at it, right? I'm good at showing up and doing the work and explaining things logically and supporting them with ideas. And like this is an exercise that I've gone through a million times. So you're probably operating the same way in your life. You're doing the things and you're showing up for the things that you already know how to do. What I'm asking you is what is that thing in your heart that you would love to do that might feel a little impossible? You don't have you don't have to do it. Okay, you don't have to do it. It's okay. But I'm wondering what is it that you would attempt if you knew you could not fail? And I'm typing mine in right now. Okay. So I would write a story about a magical world that made people feel all their potential in the limitless support of the universe. I want to create a new world because I sat with this idea last night for quite some time. Like I write poems. I love poetry, and it's a muscle that I have not flexed a lot lately, but I know that I can do it. I have never seriously written fiction, and I'm feeling called down in there to move into this new space, that I want to create something for other people that connects them magically with their own power and with the support of the universe for that power. Um, I'm going to finish what I've started here with Practical Magic for Writers, but I needed to honor that that's something I would attempt if I knew I could not fail, because now I'm deeply connected with what my soul is asking me to do. And I don't have to do it today, but at least I acknowledge I've heard you, heart. So if there's something like that for you, go ahead and let me know. Um, are there any questions about um, the workshop at all? Don't know how I turned off sound, people, but we've got sound now, I guess. Again, it's a little weird. Okay. So I was just saying that I apologize for that. It's technology. Um, what I was saying was that when we connect with our desires, right? Lots of times we don't get to manifest them the exact way we would like to. But by acknowledging them, we're holding space for the possibility, and we're holding space for the ways that they may manifest, like they may come in a different form or a different shape, right? Um, so that's fantastic. Janine says, I would love to create a presentation to share with the world. I love public speaking, the desire to return to that world. That's great. So that's fantastic. Does anyone else want to chime in on what they would like to do? Are there any questions about the workshop at all? So if you have questions, now's the time to ask them. If not, I'm going to give you just one other moment to get those questions in there if you've got one. Otherwise, I'm going to bid you adieu. Okay. So let's just take a moment. We'll like close this circle with intent. Feel your feet on the ground again. Take a deep breath in and just let all that inspiration and all that information kind of wash over you from the workshop. Allow it to settle into your pores and plant its seeds so that they can sprout and grow into something really tremendous during this workshop. And as you exhale, go ahead and just feel any kind of limitation that is holding you back from what you want leave you. And just know that we're starting together on this journey. Unit 1 should have gone out this morning at about, I sent it out at 6 a.m. It should have gone to your mailbox. I will also put it in the Facebook forum. What should you reflect on this week? Mary, that's a good question. You have write and reflect in the handouts. By handout, I mean the lesson or the chapter. So I'll go ahead and post that right as soon as we get off of this webinar. I'll go ahead and post that back in the Facebook forum. So you have the magical work, which is your book of shadows, the putting your altar together, and such, and then you have your write and reflect daily writings, right? So, and you can use them over and over. Let's say you like one prompt really, and you can just keep on manifesting that in different ways within your writing. Does that answer your questions? I'll go ahead and check and make sure that that email went out to you. I sent it out through my automated server, so maybe it didn't get triggered to release this morning, but should have gone out. And also I will go over and post it in the Facebook group so you can get it there. Okay. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for being with me on this webinar today. Thank you for investing in yourself and your magic and writing. I'm looking forward to really amazing things. All right. See you next time. Bye.